Thank you guys for tuning in to the virtual candidate forums hosted by Teaching for the Culture. My name is Bianca Goolsby, and I'm the founder, and I'm here to say thank you for being here, for being engaged and being intentional with who is going to be in our school board seats. Our children deserve the best, and we want to make sure that you are operating and you're listening very closely to what these candidates have to say. Thank you guys so much for following us. Make sure that you take a look at our website, www.teachingfortheculture.com. In addition to that, follow us on social media at Teaching for the Culture. Just a couple of rules. I want you guys to relax, have fun, and also be intentional with what the candidates have to say. If you post your questions, we will screen it. And if we have enough time, we will make sure that those questions are addressed as well. Thank you to the community that have submitted questions to us, and we are excited to get started.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight for our District 3 Virtual Candidate Forum, hosted by Teaching for the Culture. My name is Kimberlin Jackson. I'm a veteran educator, educational consultant, and life coach. I'm pleased to be with you all tonight. We wish all of our candidates good luck. So let's get started. Teaching for the Culture Candidate Forum follows the nonpartisan, unbiased, and impartial format. Time limits for all comments will be strictly enforced. In fairness to all candidates and the audience, we ask that these limits be respected. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks to introduce themselves. The moderator, I, will then ask questions submitted by the audience. So that we can address as many questions as possible in the time available, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. If time permits, candidates will also have 2 minutes for a closing statement. In fairness to all candidates, we will rotate the order of how these questions are answered. We'll get started with the opening statements. Candidates, you have 2 minutes each. First up, Ms. Gilmore.
I'm Alexandra Gilmore. I'm a mother of 2 boys and who have been born and raised in the Tampa Palms community. I have experienced several incidents of racial disparities and racial injustice, such as bullying in the district, turning a deaf ear to my academic complaints. The district or not explaining or following policies and procedures towards all races. This is not only my story, this is a story of other parents as well, whom have brought this into my attention or shared their stories with me. Not only have parents shared their stories, but teachers as well. I've been a substitute teacher for 4 years in total, 1 year in Orange County and 3 years in Hillsborough County. I have seen a lot, which allows me to know I am the person for this position. I have a heart of gold. I care and cry for kids. I cry for parents. I cry for teachers as well as all my babies I have met along the way. They know Miss Gilmore loves the kids and will feed them out of her own pocket. I have heard the teachers' views who aren't allowed a seat at the table when they are the most essential part of the educational system. The testing guidelines and curriculum allows racial injustice to occur. This system has failed kids across the board, from testing, old infrastructure, limited food, not kids feeling insecure on campus. Throughout the district, toxic behavior has been displayed on public platforms. My goal as a board member would be to bridge the gap with effective communication for teachers, students, and parents. Many times our children have dealt with racial inequalities in reference to how they are valued and treated within the public school system. It is time we have more than one person that looks like me at the table. We cannot expect change with only one color. Our kids need this, parents need this, teachers need this, and our public school system needs this as well. No more toxicity, drama, racial disparities, or racial injustices in Hillsborough County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Next up, we have Mr. Haggerty.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Bianca and Kimberlin for having me on this program tonight. My name is Leo Haggerty, and I am running for School Board District 3. I am a 44-year educator, the last 33 years in Hillsborough County. For the past 21 years, I've also been a credentialed member of the media, following all types of sports activities in the Tampa Bay area. I don't only talk the talk, I walk the walk. I've been in the Hillsborough County school system as a teacher, as an ESP. I have seen everything. I am the Clint Eastwood candidate for Hillsborough County. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, I've seen the ugly. There's a lot of good in Hillsborough County. There's some bad, but the ugly right now is standing out, and that is Black Lives Matter. Children of color have been far too often left by the wayside. That has to stop, and it has to stop now. And when you look at what's going on in Hillsborough County, we need to have a plan, and that plan needs to be long-term. It needs to be something that we look at. We have data, we've checked around to different areas of the country, see where things are working. And if it applies to Hillsborough County, let's take it. Let's go with it. Let's hit the ground running. That's what I plan to do in November when I'm elected. I will be the candidate that can hit the ground running. It won't take me 6 months to a year to figure out what's going on. I've served as the vice president of the Hillsborough Classroom Teachers Association for the past 7 years. I've served on the bargaining team for 10 years. So I know the people across the table. I know the teachers. I know the district. This is a district that can excel. It just needs to have strong leadership to move in that direction. And I am Leo Haggerty, and I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Next, we will have Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson and Bianca, for bringing us to this forum. What a great idea. I'm so glad you thought of it first. I am new. I'm fresh to the district. I'm only been in Hillsborough a couple of years, but I've been a teacher and educator in the state of Florida for 17 years. And to be perfectly honest with you, my fallback plan is go back to the classroom because I do love it and I miss it, and I'm missing my students desperately right now. I'm the only one here that taught through COVID and got to see what that was like for students. The difference for me is I've been a computer teacher my entire career. So I've always been the one that's been able to do online instruction and, guide on the side in the classroom at the same time. So I think I have the strength to help teachers pivot and know how to use technology better, as I see that a lot of teachers in Hillsborough County have even said on their teacher survey that they want to know more about how to be better educators with technology. I've also been on career academies. I believe strongly that not every student needs to go to college to be successful. I would like to see more jobs, more opportunities, more internships, more partnerships and collaborations with businesses in Tampa, providing our students and possibly their family members with jobs upon graduation. I'm also a small business owner, so I might even be able to help in that way. I was previously an instructional technology lead in the Office of School Improvement, where I worked strictly with schools day in and day out to help them turn those challenge schools around. When I went into Duval County and the challenge schools, we had 29 schools that were in challenge status, and when I left, we only had 3. So I can honestly tell you, I believe strongly in technology and education. I believe strongly in helping families find work, find job, find meaningful employment upon graduation. And I also, believe that the answers are right here in our community. I have fresh eyes and a fresh perspective. I have all new information to share.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Mr. Thrower.
Bianca for hosting this forum and Kimberlin for being the moderator. I'm excited to be a school board candidate. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a 5th generation Hillsborough County resident. I'm proud to be named after my grandfather, Mitchell Mansfield Thrower, who was killed in World War II. My mother was an educator in Hillsborough County for over 35 years and retired as principal of Forest Hills Elementary. My father is retired from the U.S. Air Force. I grew up in District 3 and attended public schools. I went to Miles, Orange Grove, Young, Buchanan, and I graduated from Chamberlain High School. I have 3 children who've all attended public schools. My youngest is currently at Walker Middle. I graduated from Tulane with a Bachelor's of Science in Management and at Florida State with an MBA. During graduate school, I worked as a substitute teacher for the Hillsborough County school system. I'm a certified public accountant, a certified internal auditor. My first job was with the Florida Auditor General's office, and I audited school boards. I audited Clay County, Hernando County, Nassau County, Pasco County, Hernando County, and also Hillsborough County school boards. Currently, I'm a senior manager at the Hillsborough County Aviation Authority. For over 25 years, I've been volunteering in the community and have held many leadership roles ranging from Cub Master for PAC 217 to the treasurer of the Early Learning Coalition of Hillsborough County. Currently, I'm chair of the Hillsborough County Planning Commission and vice chair of the 2020 Charter Review Board. I'm running for school board because I'm passionate about education and its future in Hillsborough County. If elected, my top 3 priorities are high quality education for all children, safe and secure school environment, and accountability and physical management. As a school board member, I will work to ensure our students and teachers have the best educational resources and support to be successful. I will also ensure that we are good stewards of the district's $3.3 billion budget. We have an opportunity to make a difference with the new school superintendent, and I hope to be your school board officer and lead you in this charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Ms. Vaughn.
Teaching for the Culture for having us and for everybody who's tuning in and staying engaged. My name is Jessica Vaughn. I'm a candidate for School Board District 3. I'm a dedicated mother, a certified teacher who has a passion for education. I'm an elected CDD board member who manages a yearly budget of $5 million, and I'm an active community organizer. After graduating USF in 2010, I worked at Kenley Elementary teaching first grade, and then I had my my son in 2012, and I took a year off before going back to the classroom as a substitute teacher. I love being a substitute teacher, and it keeps me in the classroom, but it also gives me the flexibility and the experience of working in a variety of school settings and classroom settings. Although I've been involved in some facet of community organizing my whole adult life, I got seriously involved in 2016 when I founded the Democratic Progressive Caucus of Tampa Bay, to which I'm still a board member. And for the past 4 years, I've organized within my community to educate and empower voters about issues not only facing our community, but our country. And I've worked to get other good candidates elected and hold them accountable. Also, I host my own podcast called Reclaiming My Mind, where I interview elected officials, candidates, and leaders within our community in order to offer more information to voters and help educate our listeners. As far as running for school board, I decided to run for school board for several reasons. One, I'm tired of watching people use it as a springboard who want to be career politicians and who don't actually have a passion for education or civil service. The fact is we need people who are dedicated to education on the school board. Number 2, it's kind of time to put my money where my mouth is. For the past several years, I've helped other candidates get elected, and I've worked within my communities around the issues. And when we wonder why we don't, I have a lot to say.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. And lastly, Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson and Ms. Goolsby for hosting this. I'm a retired bank controller and CFO with an extensive financial background, 45-year resident of Hillsborough County with 2 sons and 4 grandchildren that have gone or are going through public schools in Hillsborough County. Was raised in a little town outside of Toledo, Ohio, where my mother was a lifelong kindergarten and first grade teacher who helped over 1,000 children off to a good start in life in their first year in school. There are 2 reasons I'm running for a seat on the Hillsborough County School Board. First one being the state of Florida ranks 42nd in the nation in the funding of K through 12 public education and 46th in average teacher salaries. Where should the 3rd largest state in the nation rank? Most of us would say we should be in the top quartile. However, we're so far away, our short-term goal should probably be to reach the median. The number to accomplish that, which no one talks about other than me, is $6 billion more statewide. As that number sinks in, what will be a surprise to many is that there is hope that at least a significant portion of those funds can be found without raising taxes. Second reason I'm running is I firmly believe that at least one of the 7 school board members should be intimately familiar with school district funding and spending and be willing to explain it to Florida's citizen voters. Adequate funding is currently the single most important issue in the capability of a school district to accomplish its mission.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Before we start talking about specific issues and discussions about District 3, let's establish a foundation on the roles and responsibilities of a school board member. A reminder that you will have 1 minute to answer each question. We will start this rotation with Mr. Haggerty. What do you believe is the role of a school board member?
That's a great question, Kimberlin. The role of a school board member is to be, 1, an advocate for their students, and 2, to make sure they shepherd the funds that are there to the most respectable and to the most advantageous method. We have to take care of our kids. People are trusting the school board to do what's right for their most precious resource, and that's their children. We need to do it with the funds we have available. We have to take care of the people that take care of our kids. The first thing that we are responsible for is not the building, it's the people that are in the building. And that's the employees and the students. The school board must be the watchdog, both financially, socially, and ethically, for what goes on in the public school system.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Next, we'll have Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. The role of a school board member, as far as I'm concerned, is for me to be the voice of the teachers first and foremost. I am one. I live it. I eat it. I breathe it. I care deeply. I will listen to what the teachers need, and I can speak and breathe that experience on the board so that other folks can understand when you make a mandate, when you make a decision, the people who are carrying out those mandates have to be able to serve appropriately. I also think that school board members should be standing in the gap between families and the schools themselves, and being that sounding board that is the voice of reason, that can come to the board and say, well, this all sounds really great. However, the people who live in my area, maybe this works, maybe it doesn't work. And I want to be able to make sure those things are being represented. So again, it's the people, it's the teachers, it's the students in the buildings. They always come first.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Mr. Thrower.
As outlined in the Florida Constitution, board members have the power to hire, fire, and evaluate the superintendent. They also are required to approve a balanced budget. Board members should also be a liaison between the community and schools and must be accessible and cultivate partnerships. They must be an advocate for our school district. It is important that board members focus on policy and governance and avoid trying to micromanage. Finally, most importantly, a board member's focus should always be on what is best for all students. That's the responsibility of a board member. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Next up, Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you. So the school board has a few different facets. First of all, it's the basic organizational structure that it provides for our education in our county. And that means setting policy, balancing the budget, hiring and holding our superintendent accountable. But aside from the structural part, there's also the community part, where our job is to solicit and encourage participation and input from the community, support our school staff and our students to make sure that they have what they need, and also a key part is educating our community and advocating for education. We're also a liaison between the state, the money that they give us, the budget, the policies that they set, and our community, as well as a liaison between the school and the staff and all of the people who interact with our students. So we really need people who understand both facets of the job. They're able to build the infrastructure, manage the policy, and understand the budget, but also be engaging, reflective of their community.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Mr. Warner.
Jackson. I have 7 responsibilities on my version of the job description of a school board member. Number 1, hire the superintendent. Number 2, evaluate the performance of the superintendent. 3, establish policy. 4, listen to and act on the concerns of citizens in my district. 5, support the district's efforts to assure equity and the opportunity for each child to receive an excellent education. 6, support early learning as the key to engaging each child in his own education. And finally, use my financial expertise and understanding of school district funding and spending to educate citizens and inspire them to research the legislative candidates and vote for those who share their priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. And lastly, Ms. Gilmore.
Yes, so we must hold the superintendent accountable with managing the budget. But one of the things that we have neglected was allowing the teachers and parents to have a seat at the table. We want to make sure that they can to come in and talk without being held for retaliation. That is key. We need to make sure that teachers and parents are coming together when we're talking about what the school board role is. We need their seat at the table. So holding them accountable, yes, the superintendent, but allowing teachers and parents to come together without retaliation and taking that in for the better benefits of the children.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Question number 2. We'll start this round with Ms. Hill. What unique skills would you bring to the board? Do you have a unique perspective that may be underrepresented or absent on the board today?
Yes, I believe I do have a perspective that's different. Again, I've been in the trenches. I know what it's like to do the work that the school board needs to have done to make sure our schools are awesome. I will always be speaking up and advocating for the schools themselves because I see it on a daily basis what it's like when we're mandated with certain activities that need to be completed. The unique perspective that I bring, though, is my technology background. I'm passionate about technology. I know we're going into the next school year with COVID, and I'm severely worried about how our teachers are going to adapt and the gap that the students are going to perceive and feel. So I have a lot of ideas and solutions that I think will work. I also bring into the situation the fact that I have worked in the Office of School Improvement before, so I have seen these challenged schools that need a boost, they need a raise up, and I think I've worked in that office. I've seen strategies, I'm not going to share all of them with you today, but that will work and bring the schools back up.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Next, Mr. Thrower.
Okay, thank you, Kimberlin. I appreciate the question. I think what the unique trait that I have or skill, I'm a former auditor. I may be the only former school board auditor in the state that's running for school board or even served on school board. I've audited the Hillsborough County school system. I've audited other school boards. So I think I will be able to ask questions and actively listen without making assumptions. Being a CPA, I will be able to provide fiscal oversight and understanding of the budget process. I'm an innovative thinker, team player, and able to collaborate with others and form partnerships. These are some of the traits that will allow me to contribute immediately if elected to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Next, Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you. Yes, as far as skill set, I believe I'm one of the only candidates up here that combines the skills of being on a board, managing a budget, being in the classroom and working with other teachers and students and having a degree in education, and also already building the infrastructure with being involved in the community as a community advocate. I've built relationships with many of our elected officials. I understand the mechanics of balancing being a civil servant along with advocating for the educational needs of our students. I'm very passionate about supporting our teachers. I'm tenacious. I'm a good listener. I'm interested in being reflective of my constituency and building a board where we're transparent and we're connected to the community. I I'm also interested in the holistic health of all of our students. Equity is at the forefront of my vision for when we're talking about our school and our school district and what we need to do to support our staff and our students. And I'm willing to do the work, put the work in.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Mr. Warner.
Ms. Jackson, I'm a different type of candidate. I have an extensive financial background, and I've spent a few hundred hours over the last 3 years researching the state legislature's history of funding of children's services, beyond the school board to the Department of Children and Families and the Department of Juvenile Justice, who are partners with the school board. More importantly, I've researched how Florida compares to other states in the funding of public education. As I mentioned earlier, we're 42nd in per pupil funding and 46th in average teacher salaries. How can we expect excellence in education when funding is clearly not a legislative priority? We need to inform voters of this situation so they may choose candidates who share their priorities. The only way funding is going to change is if legislative priorities change.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Ms. Gilmore.
Totally feel like I'm different. Why? Because I've been in every aspect of the area for the educational system. I've been a long-term sub in vacancies at King High School, Greco Middle School, Wharton High School, and other areas that I've been in short-term position. So I understand completely what the children need. I'm unique. My perspective is very unique because I'm energetic. I'm able to collaborate in the community. I have literally built a parent advocate group. I talk to the community on a regular basis and other parents. I've built relationships with students, parents, and the community. I understand where they've been. I literally can say I've been in every position as far as with my own children, seeing how other children work, seeing how teachers work with the supplies and the lack of technology. I have been in the parent seat, the teacher seat, seeing the eyes of the students. So I definitely believe that my perspective is totally different. I bring a lot to the table as far as energy and being hands-on in the community and within the educational system.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. And lastly for this question, Mr. Haggerty.
Kimberlin, thank you for the question. I will bring to the table strong leadership. I have been a leader in the area, in the local, state, and national teachers union, with the Hillsborough Classroom Teachers Association, with the West Central Labor, AFL-CIO, with the FEA, the NEA, and the AFT. I have a willingness to listen to all sides of the subject. I want to hear what's happening, not decide what's happening without having data. I'm not afraid to ask the tough questions, and I am definitely going to demand the tough answers to those questions. When we look at what's going on with Hillsborough County, what I will demand, and I repeat demand, is transparency on that board and from the district and the superintendent. There's no more backroom decisions. Everything's going to be out front. It's going to be in front of the public, and people are going to have to explain why things are being done.
Thank you. This next question comes from Teaching for the Culture. This question will come first to Mr. Thrower. District 5 is a district that requires all hands on deck to assist with the systemic issues that the community and students face. How do you plan to collaborate with work needed in District 5? Can you commit to make this a priority as well?
Can you restate the question one more time?
Sure. District 5 is a district that requires all hands on deck to assist with the systemic issues that the community and students face. How do you plan to collaborate with work needed in District 5? Can you commit to making this a priority as well?
Yes, I can commit to making this a priority. I attended Young, I attended Orange Grove. I am committed to making it a priority. I apologize. Can you give me the question one more time? I guess I'm not quite understanding exactly what you're asking.
How do you plan to collaborate with the work needed in District 5?
just in general?
So I'll repeat the whole thing. District 5 is a district that requires all hands on deck to assist with the systemic issues that the community and students face. How do you plan to collaborate with work needed in District 5? And can you commit to making this a priority as well?
Yes, I've been active in serving in different leadership organizations. I have contacts with elected officials, citizen leaders, and various folks. So when it comes to District 5 and the equity issues that they face, I have the contacts. I'm willing to, whether it's poverty, whether it's, transportation needs, public safety, any of the equity issues that the students face there. I'm also, I also realize that in order to have high quality schools, we need to bring in, leadership principles will attract good teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Next, we'll have Ms. Vaughn.
Absolutely. Every school and every student in Hillsborough County should have access to quality public education. And if any of our schools are failing, that's a reflection of our entire county. We need to look at equitable funding within these schools. When you look at Title I money that's allotted to these schools, most of it goes towards paying teachers more money, which we absolutely need to do. But when you're talking about even just having access to supplies, we have the same amount of budget, and you have schools that need way more and are trying to use the same amount of money that other schools have support from PTAs. So we need to talk about equity. We need to talk about restorative discipline within our schools and making sure that we're supporting our students and we're not encouraging the school to prison pipeline, that we're nurturing all of our students. We need to make sure that those schools are achieving on the same level that the other schools are. And in order to do that, we have to realize that we have systemic inequalities within those communities as well. We need to make sure we're talking about community schools and supporting those communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Next, Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. More resources are clearly needed in District 5, but to do that means shortchanging some other area of the budget which is already underfunded, putting us in a almost no-win situation. Where do we get this money to provide more resources to hire a full complement of teachers for these schools who often do not have a full complement? As I said earlier, I'll campaign for more funding, look for ways to provide more resources. One example of how much the budget is stretched is that we can't even keep our schools in good repair. And even the property tax referendum that our citizens so generously passed will take over a decade to deal with our $1.5 billion maintenance backlog.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Next, Ms. Gilmore.
Thank you for this question. I have personally dealt with my own children with this. I would go to schools, speak with them. I had gone with schools and spoke with administrators and teachers while not being afraid to talk about the systematic issues that are in hand that cannot be ignored any further at the times that we are in. I would create and implement training programs to but to eliminate the issues that we have within our district on racial disparities and racial injustice. We need to stop. No more prison to pipeline for our brown and Black kids. And so I would literally go into the schools and try to create and implement a program, since I have personally dealt with that with my own children. I thank you for this question.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Mr. Haggerty.
Kimberlin, thank you for the question. The answer to that is not yes. It's unequivocally yes. Children of color and ethnicity have far too often been left behind by this school district. The school district has moved on, hoping that these issues would be forgotten. Well, guess what? They're not forgotten anymore. They are at the forefront of what has to happen to education. We need to move forward. There needs to be a plan. We need to find out what needs to be done We need to set a plan. It's not going to happen overnight. We need to stay the course, find a way to make this happen, and then bring it to the public. Be transparent. Say, here's what we're going to do, and then have the tenacity to follow up on it. That's something I will make sure happens when I'm elected to the school board.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. And Ms. Hill.
Thank you again, Ms. Jackson. Look, this is a challenging issue. I mean, District 3 itself is already quite large, and we have a lot to keep ourselves busy. But when you're on the school board, you're a member of a team. It's not just me serving myself and the people that live near my home. We live and die together. We hold each other up. And I would say social justice and reform is the #1 problem that our schools are facing. Poverty and cycles of poverty are holding these students back from their greatest ability to achieve. And I know people don't want to believe it, but amazing teachers are already in these schools. We need to empower them and allow them to do what they know is right for the students. Sometimes that means teaching in a different style or teaching at a different time of day or something that's going to be more proactive with the students instead of only doing what has been mandated. Sometimes that means making sure that we provide preschools and daycares and everything the students need.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Our next question will begin this round with Ms. Vaughn. What do you see as the district's greatest challenges, and how would you work to address them as a school board member?
My goodness. Well, not one of our biggest challenges is trying to work within a shrinking budget every year as Tallahassee sends less and less funds to our schools. When we talk about inequity, access to resources is at the top of that. And when we have a budget that's constantly shrinking and we have to figure out where we're going to pull and prioritize things from, because at a national and at a state level, we're not getting the support for public education, that's one of the biggest crises. When we're talking about absolutely inequity, racial justice, when we're talking about students in our classrooms that don't feel supported because they may be neurodiverse and they don't learn the same way that other students do. When we're talking about parents who don't feel like classrooms are safe, whether it's because they're worried about the drinking water and whether or not it has lead in it, or whether we have toxic toxic stuff within our schools, we need to make sure that #1, we're getting funding for public education.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Mr. Warner.
Yes, Ms. Jackson. Ms. Vaughn is exactly correct, except we are getting a little more money every year, not less, but not enough by far. As I said at the beginning, statewide, we need another $6 billion. In Hillsborough County, that would equate to about $450 million. Just think of what we could do with that. That is, the biggest issue. And my area of expertise, so I'm going to sound like a one-trick pony here, talking about needing more funding, because more of us need to be talking about that and loudly and get the electorate on board so we can change what happens in Tallahassee.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Next, Ms. Gilmore.
Yes, we have a lot of challenges in Hillsborough County, and we want to stress that. A lot has changed, and we need to change it immediately. Our children are being affected the most by this. So I would bring to the forefront our failing schools. We have got to wrap that up together. We have got to go in. We need to bring teachers to the table. The reason why they're failing is because teachers have not been at the forefront. They need to be at the table. They are the essential parts of the education. And so without them, we can't expect to go anywhere else to the top. We need teachers at the table. We need parents at the table. We need the district to support them and back them up. We not need to endure retaliation because they're bringing reality to the table. So we definitely want to support our teachers. We definitely want to hit the nail on the failing schools. We want to actually stop. We want them to the front line, and we want to get to the core of the issues, and that's our children.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Mr. Haggerty.
You know, when we look at what's going on with things in this district, we need to make sure that we are definitely on board with what's happening, not just in District 3, but all over the county. These are our brothers and sisters. We need to make sure they are taken care of just as well as everyone else in this county. Children, again, cannot be left behind. They need to be brought to the forefront. They need to see success, and we need to show them success by giving them a chance to have an adequate education no matter where you live in Hillsborough County.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hill.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What do you see as the district's greatest challenges, and how would you work to address them as a school board member?
Well, as of 2019, 43 of the schools in Hillsborough were considered among the lowest performing in the entire state of Florida. And about 39 of these schools have persistently underperformed for 3 to 5 years. That's more than Miami-Dade and Broward combined. These districts face the same financial challenges, they have the same types of families, and yet they're finding a way to get through. Thankfully, we've hired that new superintendent to help bring us some fresh ideas. And that's where I also come in. I come from a different area where I've seen different things and tried different strategies. I think we need to go to the community-based approach. We need to give families ownership and leadership inside of the buildings, and trust in their engagement, and listen to them and believe that they know what's right. We've got to fill the gaps of the students' lives where things aren't quite perfect in their neighborhood so that they can feel safe and comfortable at school. And again, racial and social justice, they've got to be in the forefront of everything we do.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. And last for this question, Mr. Thrower.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the question. I would say, other than the items that have already been mentioned with COVID-19, it's critical. One of the pressing issue is how are the kids going to be taught? I think technology is, we need to make sure our kids have the technology and the teachers have the training and the kids have the children have the training on how to use the technology. We also need to be concerned with safety, whether it's COVID-19 or just safety in general. That's another item that's very critical. Transportation, I've talked to a lot of parents in this district. There is concern about the transportation, the 2-mile zone out from the schools, the lack of communication when buses are broken down and stuff. That's a big issue. And then the third issue, which I think with my background as an auditor and a CPA, accountability and fiscal management. With the school district having a $3.3 billion budget and a half-cent sales tax that is in place right now, generating about $138 million a year, it's critical that the district spend wisely. If we, with the $3.3 billion budget, if the school system can just save 1%, that's $33 million. You say.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Our next question will begin this round with Mr. Warner. What will you do to ensure every public school student in Hillsborough County receives a world-class education?
Well, there's two things that need to be done to accomplish that. First, you have to provide equal opportunity for that excellent education to all children, regardless of race. Which involves, in these environment that we're in now, probably more inventive training on overcoming even our unconscious racial biases, and then confronting racism when it arises. But the toughest chore, what's really rocket science in a school district, is finding that teacher, counselor, mentor, community member who can turn on the each child's interest in education, that thing that is sometimes so difficult to do.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Next, we'll have Mr. Haggerty.
Kimberlin, thank you for the question. What we need to do is identify the schools that need the help. And again, we've done that with the achievement program. We need to have the low performing schools turned in to community-based wraparound schools. We need to get the parents involved immediately, completely, and effectively. Some of these kids leave school and the last meal they get is lunch there. That needs to be changed. It needs to be done where health services, mental health services, all kinds of things need to be handled in the school. Parents need to feel that they are part of the solution. They can't be made to feel part of the problem. This needs to happen. Every child should get a quality education. We have to provide that at all costs to our children, no matter where they live in this county.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Next, we'll have Ms. Hill. Okay, so it looks like we're having a few technical difficulties. So let's fast forward to Ms. Gilmore.
Yes, so there would be 3 points that I would make. And it would be, we need to train our teachers, our staff, our district about racial injustice. They need to understand that it exists and it's real. And we need to get past that so our children can be effective in their educational journey. Second, I would build relationships, not just within District 3, with all of the districts, because if just my district is successful, then we have failed. We need all of Hillsborough County to be successful, all students. My students in District 3 would also be my students in District 5, District 1 as well. So we need to bridge the gap between all districts. If one district is failing, then we've all failed. So I definitely would want to bridge the gap. I would want to also make sure, I can't stress this enough, teachers at the forefront with parents to understand what we need to do for the educational success of our students. These are our students, and we have gotten so far away from that. So I want to bring it back right where it needs to be.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. All right, Ms. Hill, we'll come back to you.
I appreciate you. Thank you for your patience with that. I mean, to me, world-class education, it goes to both ends of the pendulum. We've got to start before school with preschool services, where it's free, it's compulsory, it's actually aligned to the skills that we know the students need to have before they start kindergarten, so that when they start kindergarten, they're not in the gap. They're not 12 to 14 months behind their fellow students in other parts of the county. And then we wrap it up by the end of their junior and senior year when they're in high school by making sure that local businesses, companies have evaluated the skills they need to provide jobs, to provide meaningful work, so those students have somewhere to go upon graduation if they choose not to go to college. That's just 2 parts of the solution, I think, that's going to give every kid a world-class education in Hillsborough County.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Mr. Thrower.
Okay, thank you. I would say that traditionally in Florida, extra funding has gone to the high achieving schools instead of those that have students that may need more assistance and resources. We need to consider the needs of students when allocating funds. School districts should have more flexibility when spending funds. The flexibility will allow districts to be able to allocate the money to those students that need it. The school district should also ensure that students are getting the basic needs that they need. Make sure families are receiving federal and assistance programs. As a school board member, I would be working with others to make sure things such as temporary assistance for needs family program, food and housing benefits, and unemployment. If the kids are hungry, if children are coming to school hungry, they're not to be prepared to learn. And that's what we need to make sure the basic needs for the children are met. I just recently visited Mort Elementary School. It's a community partner school in District 3. I think there's only 2 community partner schools in the county like Mort. Mort has 25 core partners. They're meeting. They do financial training for parents. They have food pantries. They're meeting the needs of the family and children.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. And last for this question, we'll have Ms. Vaughn.
Is my mic on? So there's no one easy answer for this because every student is unique and diverse. And the first thing that we need to do is trust the teachers and the school staff who are trained to do their jobs and evaluate each student and differentiate to wrap around and make sure that they have the tools that they need to succeed. Several of the opponents are right. We need to make sure first that our communities are supported and our students have the necessities it takes to learn. But then we need to make sure that we're evaluating each district, each school individually to see what its needs are and to make sure that we can meet those needs. We need to make sure that we're offering several different tracks and pathways for students, ones who aren't necessarily college bound. And we need to make sure we're looking at our schools holistically to make sure they're a welcoming, safe, and nurturing environment for not only our students, but also for our teachers and our support staff and our parents. That is how we make sure that each student has a world-class education. We figure out who they are, what their needs are, where they're at, and how to support them and the people who are working with them every single day.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. We'll move on to our next question. In this round, we'll begin with Ms. Gilmore. Would you support or oppose legislation that would provide for vouchers, tax credits, or charter schools to develop in our state, and why?
That's a tough question because I don't personally agree with charter schools. I feel like it takes away from the traditional public school system, and that's why we have issues with the infrastructure on our traditional public school systems. I feel like they get an advantage with charter schools. They get two funds of money. They get the money from the state and they get it privately. And so that's why they're ahead of the game as far as infrastructure, not having limited supply of foods, things of that nature that affects the child with testing, anything when it comes to grades. So when you ask me about charter schools, I have to say it's a modern day segregation. And so I do not agree with charter schools. I totally believe that we need to focus on the traditional older schools because they are lacking. When you have mold, you have ceiling damages. How can you expect a child to be successful? And as I stated before, we want all our children to be successful. So we need to focus on those traditional students as well as we do those charter students.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Next, Mr. Haggerty.
Kimberlin, that may be the $64 million question, and thank you for it. Charter schools were originally set up as nonprofit entities to help a specific area of our student population. That has morphed into for-profit education, and our children are not for sale. This is not something that should come up. I am not for for-profit charter schools now. I will not be in the future. They have no rules. They do not follow any of the guidelines for the public schools. And as Ms. Gilmore said, and I can't echo it enough, it siphons money off from the public schools. It's taking away programs from children in the public schools to go to other areas which have no requirements, have no accountability. I am not for it now. I will not be for it when I'm elected.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Next, we have Ms. Hill.
Yeah, this is a no-brainer for me. I know that charter schools aren't going anywhere. I get it, but I would oppose vouchers to leave to go to those charter schools. If you want to go to a private school, you should have to pay for it. I do agree there are certain schools that can meet needs of special students or different ability students, but for the most part, what we need to do is make sure that our public schools are flexible or as flexible as the charter schools so that parents feel like public school is the only and best option for their child. And there no way should there ever be a charter school anywhere near a public school where they're competing for students. The charter schools exist to fulfill a very specific obligation to the community, and they're not there to take students away from our amazing schools. The charter should be limited and then closed once the public school can meet the needs of the community so that the public schools can continue on being great.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Next, we'll have Mr. Thrower.
Okay, thank you, Kimberlin. I'm a staunch supporter of the public schools, and I'm in favor of quality educational options for all students. I believe the charter schools fill a need in our school system and provide our students with more options. I think the Hillsborough County school system should try to partner and work with charter schools, especially when it comes to where they are located. There are areas in our community where our current public schools are over capacity or other needs exist, and that charter schools could possibly satisfy those needs. Therefore, I believe the school system should partner with the charter operators to operate in areas with a need, and this could be a win-win for everyone, including the students. Hey, I think charter schools should be accountable just like public schools, but hey, they fill a need and they can benefit the students that are out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Next, we'll have Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you. So charter schools do fill a need, and that's because right now privatization companies are engineering our public schools to fail so they can privatize education and they can profit from it. Charter schools were originally created to be think tanks for alternative education, and then if we were successful with that, we were to integrate it into our curriculum. But what they're doing right now is they're a mask for privatization companies. I am against for-profit charter schools. If we're going to make partnerships with charter schools, it should be charter schools that are not for profit, and we should encourage them to do alternative education like Montessori classes or Waldorf schools, so children who are neurodiverse and have trauma can access those education. But right now, we need to be very clear that these charter schools are an attempt to privatize education. And with that, they have private boards that can discriminate based on things like hair texture or learning ability. And with the state legislator passed an amendment where charter schools don't have to have certified teachers. They don't have to.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. And last for this question, we'll have Mr. Warner.
Lots of good comments, as you would expect from folks running for a traditional public school board. The concept of choice is one of the benefits of freedom. We need to be careful not to paint all charters with the brush of the for-profit charter. Hillsborough has lots of great charter schools which meet the needs of the children that were not being met by traditional schools, as Ms. Vaughn explained. However, school choice can be abused by for-profit charters more concerned with profits than serving children. Public charter schools which receive taxpayer funding should be held to the same standards as traditional public schools. Taxpayer funding of vouchers, which can be used at private schools, is wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. I just want to take a moment to thank those of you who are engaging in the comments and ask you to continue to do so. And to our candidates, you're doing an amazing job. We're about halfway through. Our next question will go right back to Mr. Warner. How would you develop and maintain a relationship with the district to better understand teacher perspectives and what works best for students?
That's a good question. As a newly elected board member, you would have to learn from your associate board members and observation. I've been observing the school board meetings and school board committee meetings for the past 3 years, and think I'm beginning to get some experience in the educational area, which is not part of my background.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Next, we'll have Ms. Vaughn.
Can you repeat the question for me one more time just to make sure I have it correct?
Not a problem. How would you develop and maintain a relationship with the district to better understand teacher perspectives and what works best for students?
Thank you. I mean, that seems like a pretty easy question. To figure out what works best, you talk to teachers, you give them a seat at a table, you partner with them, you make sure that they feel included and engaged in the decisions that you're making since they're at the forefront of student interaction. You also engage with parents, you do the research to figure out and look at other districts to see what's successful and bring that back to teachers. But ultimately, if you want to build a relationship with a group of people, you empower, engage them, and include them in the conversation. And that starts by having school board meetings at a time when teachers can attend, and not on the one day each week they're contractually obligated to be at school and at times that are inconvenient to them. So if you want to know how to set teachers up to be successful or what they need in their classrooms, you ask them, you engage them, and you include them in the conversation. You give them a seat at the table.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Next, we'll have Ms. Hill. One moment, your mic is muted, Ms. Hill.
My
Go ahead.
relationship with the district is easy. I feel super comfortable in the schools. It's very important for me to be out in the buildings, talking to administrators, seeing what it looks like in the classrooms themselves, and listening. I will talk to the PTA. I will talk to the assistants. I will talk with the children in the hallway. I want to be out there to get the feeling, to get the pulse on what's going on in the individual buildings, because they're all a different flavor. They're all different. And then I bring that back to the school board and I share what I've learned at my schools with the other board members and see what they're experiencing, so we can come together collaboratively to make the best decisions on the whole for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Next up, we'll have Ms. Gilmore.
Thank you for that question as well. So I would definitely continue to bring the teachers to the table, parents and students. It's not just one set of people, as I continue to say. I like to stress that. It is parents, teachers, and students that need to come together with the district. Once they see that camaraderie, that collaboration, we can advance. And so I would allow them to not just have a voice, but remember, without retaliation. That is the key here, to not have to worry about when they come to the table, will they be retaliated against? Because I myself have endured that, and I've heard other teachers have had to worry about that. And so we don't want them to feel like they can't come sit at the table. Also, my energy and my collaborative energy in the community and my willingness to get down and dirty is what allows me to be different. That's what I would bring to this district. Energy, collaboration, being able to work within the community, bringing all of the districts together. Once they see that collaboration, Hillsborough County will excel. I know it. I can believe it. I've lived in it in Orange County, and I know that we can do the same thing in Hillsborough County. I can't wait.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Next, we'll have Mr. Thrower.
Thank you, Kimberlin. Yeah, I think it's critical to be out in the community, visiting the schools, talking to the teachers, talking to the parents, talking to the kids. One thing that when Dr. Lamb, before Cindy Stewart, I think Cindy Stewart and Dr. Lamb both did a great job of getting out and talking to folks. Dr. Lamb had a District 3 communication group. If I'm elected, I'd look at bringing that back. I thought it was great. I served on it. He got input from parents, teachers, people who are out in the community. I think Cindy Stewart did a great job of getting out to the schools and meeting with the teachers and the parents and the students. That's the key. You got to be communicating. You got to be talking to people. You got to be accessible. One thing Kathy Castor does, Coffee with Kathy, on a regular basis. Sandy Merman does a similar thing. I think, there's different ways you can be creative about it. You can have coffee, you can have tea, whatever. But the thing is, you got to be accessible, and that's what I do. And I take what I learned back to the board and communicate it to the other board members and to the administration and other folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. And last for this question, we'll have Mr. Haggerty.
Kimberlin, thank you for the question. For the last 33 years, I've been there and I've done that. I've worked in the Hillsborough County Public Schools. And what I found in those 33 years is one fact that sticks out like a sore thumb. If it's not good for educators, it's not good for kids, because nobody buys in. We need to get a buy-in. We need to recognize what the problems are and then come with solutions. Give you an example. Back in January, I came to the school board when they had told us that they were short of money. I said, if you're short of money, put forth a referendum to the voters of Hillsborough County strictly for construction. That was done. It was approved in November. I have the ability to see what the problem is and to get it done and to get it changed.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. We'll move on to our next question, and this round will begin with Mr. Thrower. Share the work you have done or visits you have made to elementary, middle, and/or high schools in the community you plan to serve in the past 7 months.
Okay, thank you. Like most of you, over the past 3 months, I've been mainly staying at home with the COVID-19 issue, so I haven't done much in the last 3. However, I recently had an opportunity to visit Mort Elementary, which is in District 3, and met some of their staff, including their assistant principal, and learned more about what they are doing as one of the only 2 community partnership schools in our county. Mort is an achievement school and has over 1,000 students. It is one of 14 schools that are to be offering VPK this summer, beginning Monday. Prior to COVID-19, I was also invited to attend a Chamberlain High School Legacy Alliance board meeting and a basketball game. I had an opportunity to meet Terry Sisko and other board members who are working hard for Chamberlain. Chamberlain is also an achievement school. Both schools have strong leadership, good educators that are focused on improving. Both, they have community involvement, and I think they're both models that should be looked at and possibly, expanded on. That's what I do, and I continue to visit schools. When my grandmother, she was an assistant principal. She retired from.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Next, we'll go over to Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you for the question, Kimberlin, but it's really an unfair question to the other candidates because I have the ability, being an employee of the school district, Hillsborough County, to go to any school in the county. And I've been to many schools in District 3, seeing what goes on, seeing the great job that teachers and ESPs do, seeing the great jobs that administrators do, and seeing the success that children have throughout this district, especially in District 3. There is education going on, teaching, especially during the pandemic, which was really pushed to its limit, didn't miss a beat. And again, that was the important thing. Education went on. Children found a way to become part of the solution. E-learning was something we didn't even fathom in February. In March, it was the new norm. And again, hopefully we can move on to something, but that may be what we're stuck with.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Next, we'll go over to Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you. As a substitute teacher, I've been in almost all of the schools within my district and spent a lot of time in the teachers' lounge listening to how teachers really feel. At the end of the day, we need school board candidates who don't just show up for photo ops at schools to pretend like they care about our schools. We need candidates who are leaning in, who are getting to know each of these schools individually, who are having tough conversations, who are engaging with parents, with the teachers, with their community. And I already know my district. I've already gotten to know it. I can tell you how many schools are in it, the size, how many voters are in there, and what the issues are. Parents in my district care about safety. Parents in my district care about supporting their ADHD kids or their kids on the autism spectrum that's falling through the cracks. Teachers in the schools that I go into feel frustrated trying to manage their workload along with all of the other obligations that they have. So we need people who aren't just going into these schools for photo op, but are going in to really build relationships to strengthen each school individually.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Next, we'll have Ms. Gilmore.
Hi, yes, awesome. So within the last 7 months, I have been at King prior to COVID. So I worked there from the beginning of September. I was a long-term sub for a vacancy for math. I literally went above and beyond because I didn't want those children who were in their seniors and juniors, some 9th graders in geometry, to fall behind. So I took the time to literally study the information that the department head gave me at King. She worked one-on-one with me. I would literally go out my way to purchase snacks and food because these children would be hungry out of my own pocket from the sub money that I would make. I have volunteered in my own son's school at 10 Palms Elementary, donated supplies to their classroom as well as King's classroom, giving out my own pocket to both schools. Even my son at Liberty Middle School, I've donated to as well. I've volunteered at my son's school when they have had a field day. I have been active in my son's church as well at Ottawa Baptist Church. I've attended the parade graduation for the seniors outside when that got delayed and they couldn't have it. I've built many relationships with parents and teachers.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Next, we'll have Ms. Hill.
Thank you. This came up pretty quickly. Props out to Miss Stewart. Cindy, I know, is watching and listening and making comments, and she took an unexpected decision to run for a different position in April. And prior to that, I would have never even dreamed of running. So for the past 7 months, I haven't been walking in and out of schools necessarily in my neighborhood, but I've been in schools. I've been doing the work. I'm the FBLA teacher. I'm there late. I was taking my students to Orlando the day that Orlando shut down. I've been in no less than 100 parent-teacher conferences this school year. 60 of them I conducted online, over the telephone, or via telecommunications, because I'm the gifted coordinator at my school. And by law, my students' gifted needs had to be met, and their parents needed to be talked with. I went to the awards assemblies. I went to the musical performances of the students. I went to the sporting events. I am out there. I'm involved. I'm engaged.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. And lastly, for this question, we'll have Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And before I answer this one, I want to thank my fellow candidates for those great answers. That is exactly what you do. You collaborate and listen to teachers, parents, and students. I participated in the period dress costume full day program for the Ellis Island immigration process at one of my grandson's schools. I'm also an advocate for a program called The Leader in Me, which is based on the principles of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which, as most of you know, is the best-selling book of its kind in history. Nearly a dozen Hillsborough County schools have implemented that program, and I was at the beginning of a plan to visit those schools to see why some were successful and some were not when the pandemic hit.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Our next question will begin with Ms. Hill. What have you done to lay a foundation for a successful candidacy? Speak specifically to fundraising, campaign staff, and key endorsements.
Again, thank you for the question. This came up very, very quickly, so I've had to kind of throw together a quick campaign, if you will. And frankly, with COVID and the economic strain that's put on people, I've been offered donations, but I've chosen personally not to accept any at the moment. I'm self-funding everything to see how this pans out into the primary. I know that doesn't sound like the right political answer, but I don't want to take money from people until I can promise you that I'm going to make it onto the general and that I'm going to make the difference that you're looking for. So I do have a campaign manager, and I also have a campaign company that I'm working with that's helping me do my online campaign and helping me do my mailing and my flyer. So you will see all that coming out very, very shortly.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Next, we'll have Mr. Haggerty.
Kimberlin, thank you for the question. Like Ms. Hill, I came late to the party. I decided about 4 weeks ago to throw my hat in the ring. I have a campaign treasurer. We have a campaign account. We have everything in process. Probably by the end of the week, everything will be happening. I've got the endorsement of the Hillsborough Classroom Teachers Association as a candidate in District 3. And I plan on running a very clean, a very upfront, and a very positive campaign as we move forward into the primary and hopefully to the general election.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Next, Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you. I have built a broad coalition of support. If you check my campaign donations, which you should for every candidate in this race to see who's really supporting them, I have over 150 people who have donated to me small donations. They're not big donations. $10, $15, people who I've built relationships with in the community, who know what I'm standing for, who know that I'm a leader, who trust me and who advocate for me enough to give me their hard-earned money. We also have built an expanded expansive campaign with a website, a platform. I have social media going on. I have been endorsed by County Commissioner Mariella Smith. Also, we have signs up, we have t-shirts, we have an active group of volunteers that are reaching out to the community. We had a sign waving event last week with a lot of pictures. We have phone banking set up to reach our voters, and not just to tell them about our campaign, but to ask them what they care about, to gather information about COVID-19 right now and whether or not they feel comfortable sending their children into the classroom. Running a campaign is about also being reflective.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Next, we'll have Mr. Warner.
Thank you again, Ms. Jackson. I do not have the financial and organizational support of a political party or the teachers union. So frankly, my chances of winning are slim and none. Two people I think you've heard of. So, but I'm running anyway because I'm passionate about getting the message out to the electorate that we need to change the priorities of the state legislature so that they adequately fund public education, which is a constitutional requirement. All six of us want the same thing. What's best for the Hillsborough County School District? I am inviting my fellow candidates to feel free to use any of the voter information on my website, kidsfirstflorida.com, in their campaigns. The information has been thoroughly researched and the sources noted.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Next, we'll have Ms. Gilmore.
Thank you. So I just want to say that this whole thing was God sent. This was literally thrown in my lap by God. So I'm a last person candidate as well. But I want to say right now, thank you to my friends and family who have supported me within this last week and a half. My campaign managers are my friends and family. That's it. We've never done this before, but we're doing an awesome job. And I'm so glad and blessed that they are here to help me. And those who have donated. I know Jessica stated that she's had 100 candidates, friends give to her. I've had 300 that really believed and seen what I've done thus far. And so I know that I have no but corporations. I have no ties with any companies. It's literally those in the community that have seen that I have been at schools, that I have volunteered, that I've worked in the community, that I eat out in my community. I support all small businesses. So I've already started going in the community this week and just rebuilding those relationships. I've worked in the community as a fitness instructor as well. So I'm confident that this is what I'm meant to be and that I should be the candidate for District 3.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. And lastly, for this question, we'll have Mr. Thrower.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the question. I'll have to say I was encouraged by friends and family to run. I think they thought I was qualified. I think I'm the best qualified, but I think the rest of the candidates are very qualified too. My wife is my campaign manager. My wife is my treasurer. So we're spending very little money. I've been overwhelmed by the financial support I've been getting and the volunteers I've gotten. I basically, whether it's time, talent, or treasure, I'm getting all three. I've lived in this District 3 pretty much my entire life, except for, since I've lived in Tampa, I've lived in District 3. I went to Timberland High School. My brothers went to Gaither High School. My mom was principal at Forest Hills. My mom's best friend was principal at Moore Elementary and at Highwell Elementary. So I know a lot of people in this district. And like I said, I'm overwhelmed and humbled by the support I'm getting, and just the volunteers that are coming out. It's exciting, and I hope to get elected and be able to show them that we're going to do a good job for all kids.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Our next question will start with Ms. Gilmore. Hillsborough County Public Schools leads the school to prison pipeline in the state of Florida. What policies and work as an elected official will you commit to do in order to combat this systemic issue?
Trainings. I can't say that enough and stress it enough. We need to be able to talk about racial injustice and racial disparities within our school system, with our principals, with our teachers, with our district. We can't avoid that. We have a horrible issue when it comes to prison to pipeline, and my sons are on the front line of that issue. And so as I have seen and sat in schools and the district and had deaf to ears when I have contacted on issues of this such nature, we have got to stop that. So I would be at the forefront bringing this issue up to the table, even if it allows people to be uncomfortable. We have got to stop this negative narrative. So we would not need trainings. We would need to look at how our schools are being ran, as far as, are we being social divided by color? Because we need our boys and our girls to understand that this is about an educational system and learning and being academically successful. There is no prisoner pipeline with Ms. Gilmore at the table. We're going to stop that negative narrative. And so trainings, bringing parents and teachers to the table and letting parents see that we are here for your children, and teachers, we support you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Next, we'll have Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you. First, we need to make sure that our schools, especially in our achievement areas, feel like schools and community centers and not like a prison themselves. That means that we need less resource officers and police presence and more wraparound services, mental health counselors. We need to make sure that we are doing restorative discipline practices and not punitive practices. We need to make sure we're engaging students and empowering them for whatever pathway that they have, whether that means college, tech school, whatever the path to success looks like for them. We need to make sure that we're welcoming our students into our classroom, and we're creating environments that are full of trust, that we have peer mediators, that we're teaching everybody in the school about conflict resolution and how to de-escalate situations instead of making it something where it's all punitive and there's only punitive response to people and children who make mistakes. And we need to support the communities. You know, if you come from a community where, 60% of your male population is locked up, it comes with full criminal justice reform. It's a much larger conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Next, we'll have Ms. Hill.
Oh, thank you. This is so huge and so near and dear to my heart. I might say something controversial here, but I agree. The schools have got to stop feeling like prisons themselves. We have got to find a better way to assess impulsive behavior of children. There should be a nurse in every building before there is a police officer in every building. If there is a police officer in the building, that person should be trained to deal with mental health and de-escalation. The staff themselves should do implicit bias training. We cannot change the fact that we have bias, but we sure can change how we react when we're in a bad situation, and we can be better people because of it. And look, everybody, the lunch personnel, the custodians, the bus drivers, they all need to look for warning signs of the physical and mental signs that we're going to see when we go back in the fall. These kids are under stress, they're breaking down, and their behavior is not going to be an indication of who they are or what they're capable of. All of us have got to pull together to get them services.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Next, we'll have Mr. Thrower.
Okay, thank you. I thought Mrs. Hill gave a good answer. I'd say we need to ensure that schools are communicating with parents, especially when it comes to issues that the school might be having with their child. Teachers and administrators need to be fair and firm when addressing disciplinary issues. Students need to know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Teachers and administrators should be trained on appropriate ways of disciplining students and should avoid labeling students. That's key. You don't want to label a student. We also need to ensure that all school resources officers are properly trained, engaged in the school, and known by the students. School resource officers should know how to deal with students so that they're handling of disciplinary issues, such as minor nonviolent and violent infractions, do not escalate into violent criminal incidents. I'm also a big fan of partnerships with groups such as Big Brothers Big Sisters. They have a Bigs in School program, which I believe is excellent. It's an excellent way of providing mentors to students. Big Brothers Big Sisters also has a program specifically focused on providing bigs to students who might have a parent or relative who is incarcerated. I think private partnerships.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Next, we'll have Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. I only have two things to add to the great comments by the other candidates. Number one, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office is the least of the law enforcement entities in the state of Florida in using something called civil citations for first-time juvenile offenders, which encompasses a training program to try to catch those first-time offenders and turn them in the right direction. We need to have a conversation with the Hillsborough County Sheriff about greater use of civil citations. Secondly, we need even more collaboration with the Department of Children and Families and the Department of Juvenile Justice, who do an awful lot of counseling for at-risk children and their families, and that needs to be even better coordinated than it already is with the school district.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. And lastly, for this question, we'll have Mr. Haggerty.
Kimberlin, thank you for the question. Again, I hate to sound repetitious, but this needs to be a wraparound community school project. We need to set up to recognize early these problems and to create a support system so these children will get the help they will need. Parent involvement is essential, but not just parent involvement, parent and school. It can't be a capitulation. It has to be a collaboration between parents, students, teachers, administration, and the district. Finally, I think one of the most important things is students would have to see in their building people who are positive role models that look like them. We have to get more teachers of color, principals of color into these schools so kids could look around and say, hey, there's somebody who is making a difference. That's who I want to be like.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. This will be our last question for the night, and we'll go right back over to Mr. Haggerty. What is your vision for education for the community you hope to serve, and how do you expect to be held accountable for moving the district forward toward that vision?
Well, Kimberlin, thank you for the question. And again, when you look at what's going on, being an elected official from School Board District 3, your job is to represent the constituents. I will have an open door policy, and I will be able to get out in the community and talk to people. And again, how am I held accountable? In 4 years, there's another election. And if you're not doing the job, it'll be painfully obvious to everyone that you have just talked the talk, you haven't walked the walk. And I'll be the one person in there that is leading and with strong leadership to make sure that District 3 is one of the prime areas of education, not just for mathematics and for science and for social studies, but for ethics, for respect, for equity and equality.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Next, we'll have Ms. Hill.
I mean, my vision for education is easy. It's simple. Look, when those teachers do their work survey satisfaction at the end of the year, and they fill in that they love their job, they're happy with their job, and that the school year was a success, I know it's a success. We can certainly look at increased reading proficiency, higher employment rates. We can see more of our students graduating, getting scholarships for schools. Those are all things that I would love to have feathers in my cap, but the best thing that will compliment me is hearing the surveys that come back from the parents and the teachers in those individual buildings with increased satisfaction in what's going on inside that building.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Next, we'll go over to Mr. Thrower.
Yeah, my top three priorities will be high quality education for all students, safe and secure school environment, and accountability and fiscal management. I think that's key. We need a system. If we focus on that, we can have high quality education for all students. And that's what we need to do. We need to make sure, the funds, we're looking at the kids, that we need to look at the needs of the children in the various areas. We make sure those children get funding. And we just got to make sure we're, whether it's the achievement gap or other issues, equity issues, or whatever issues, we got to make sure that the children who are coming to our schools, basic needs are met and they're ready to learn. and we just got to hold the superintendent accountable. And like I said, school by school, get good leaders into those schools, good principals attract good teachers. That's, you look at Chamberlain, you look at Mort, you look at other schools, the schools that have the good principals attract the good teachers. And it's, that's why when you have a principal change or principal move somewhere else, a lot of the times the teachers follow them. So that's my.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Next, we'll go to Ms. Vaughn.
My vision for our schools are to make sure that our schools are safe, inclusive, equitable, supportive, nurturing, where every student feels valued and where everybody values education. We need to have a partnership between our community, with our leaders, with our teachers, with our parents who need to be included in the conversation. And we need to focus on the fact that education is the basis for everything, and education is power. Also, how will I be held accountable? I challenge people to hold me accountable. I don't shy away from criticism or tough conversations. I lean into it, and I see it as an opportunity to learn something and to be better. I don't take every little comment that might be critical as an insult and something that's personal to me, because my job is to be a civil servant and to make sure that I'm being reflective of my constituency. So if people have complaints, if they're frustrated, I want to hear that. I want to validate that and see how we can resolve that. So I have no problem being held accountable.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Next, we'll go over to Mr. Warner.
Yes, well, my vision is pretty simple. Two things: provide the opportunity for an excellent education to every child in Hillsborough County. This has been, we've made a lot of progress, as evidenced by the improvement in graduation rates and the improvement in the reduction in the difference between graduation rates of white students and minority students, both of which, set records this year and have been doing so for the past few years. So I think the district's doing a great job there, and we sometimes, as candidates, tend to criticize the current administration. Actually, I think they're doing great, and we got a new fireball superintendent that's where board member is going to have to help accomplish all he wants to accomplish. And the second thing is, again, finding the key to engaging each child in their own education.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. And lastly, for this question, we'll have Ms. Gilmore.
Well, I have to agree with Mr. Haggerty on this one with the open door policy. I'm definitely open to having people contact me, as I do now, as I reach out to parents at my son's schools, at the schools that I do long-term vacancies at. I want to make sure not just that my door is open, that it's meaningful, that it's real, that they literally can come to me and know that Ms. Gilmore is going to do the job. They have confidence, just like when I'm at that classroom at King High School, Greco, Wharton, when I've been at Mort, hands-on with the children and talking to parents. So I want to have the true meaning of open door policy, not just to say it, but to mean it, to see it in me, when you see me in the community, knowing that even when I'm not on the clock, come up to Ms. Gilmore, ask me questions, let's talk, let's chat. It's on my website as well, let's chat. So it's there, I'm here for the community. So I want to make sure that I'm effective with my job as well. So open door policy, I have to agree with Mr. Haggerty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Before we move into our closing statements, as a veteran educator in Hillsborough County Public Schools, I would like to personally thank each of our candidates here tonight for giving us insight into your platforms and vision for District 3 schools and Hillsborough County as a whole. We look forward to continuing this conversation. We ask all of our community members who have joined us tonight to please share this broadcast, tag your friends and family, get them engaged in shaping the future of Hillsborough County Public Schools. We will now move into our closing statements. Candidates, you will have 2 minutes each. We'll begin with Ms. Gilmore.
Well, I just want to end with that. I have my 90-day plan, and my 90 plan is to actually come in and meet the colleagues, study the policies and procedures with the budget. I would align myself with teachers and sit down with them. Teachers need to have a seat at the table as well. It's beyond time we listen to them without retaliation. My key word tonight, without retaliation. I would also reach out to parents so that we can join forces of both teachers and the parents to build teams so we can address some of the issues at hand. We must move past this toxicity and drama and get back to the real issues at hand, the success of the students. I would plan to visit every school in District 3 to meet the teachers and the administrators. I would like to see the infrastructures as well as for the traditional public schools. I would want to see how we can utilize the budget to fix the infrastructure in older schools in low socioeconomic areas that have been neglected for way too long. I would want to begin listening and talking in all ideas of teachers and administration, taking in all ideas of teachers and administrations so that they can be collaborating with the school board without retaliation. We need the entire school district to thrive, not just one group of people, but back to being not just one group of people. We need to make sure students see us all coming together so that the environment gets back to being conducive. I want the teachers, parents, and students to see I'm here to bridge the gap and make this environment relax once again for the better of our students and our teachers. Thank you. I'm Alexandra Gilmore.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. Next, Mr. Haggerty.
First of all, Kimberlin and Bianca, I want to thank you for hosting this forum. Secondly, I want to thank my fellow candidates. 95 minutes of positive debate and discussion. You don't find that too often in a political election, and I want to thank you for that. COVID-19, we have got to look at that because that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I pride myself when I go to a school board meeting of coming up with an answer for the question I'm asking. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have an answer. If I had an answer, I'd be the commissioner of education in the state of Florida. Every plan I've heard come out of our district office is a bad plan. And we are going to have to just pick the best bad plan to move forward. The vital portion of that is to protect our students and employees. With all prudence, we have to safeguard those people. Second, elections have consequences. Florida is supposed to adequately fund public education. Well, the legislature thinks they're adequately funding it now. We know that's not the case. We need to elect people to go to Tallahassee who are pro-public education. Finally, I am the one candidate that has all four. I hit for the cycle if you look for baseball. I am pro-student, I am pro-teacher, I am pro-ESP, I am pro-union. And people need to vote for the candidate who they think is the best interest of their precious commodity, their children, at the forefront of all decisions that are made, and to fight for what is right for all employees, because it's not right for educators, it's not right for students. Voters need to select a person who will lead this district with strong judgment, strong ideas, and not just follow for the sake of following along to stay in line with what's being told.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Next, we'll go over to Ms. Hill.
Wow, what a great night. I can't agree more with Leo that positivity, lots of idea sharing, lots of great ideas. I'm so grateful to be here. I want to be just absolutely blatant about why I'm here. I've personally worked with Addison Davis before. I know he's a rock star. I know what he's going to be able to do for our school district, and I want to be a part of it desperately. But moreover, again, it's true. COVID-19 brought me straight into the forefront. This was a struggle to get the education out and the platforms out and support the teachers so that the best education could occur. And you need a school board member that can also see it from that point of view and make sure that there's a one-to-one laptop situation where students leave the school, college ready and capable of learning online. Education equity is a nightmare. We are letting too many students fall between the cracks. It has to start in preschool and has to end in their junior, senior year, where they are learning that there's more to life than college. Sometimes it's job skills, sometimes it's internships, sometimes it's job shadowing, sometimes it's a gap year. Whatever it is, we need to help make our students ready for life, not just college, when they leave our schools. Safety, mental and physical. Our kids are shaken. This is a very strange time to be a child in public education and in the world. We are the adults. We've got to show them the way. We've got to be compassionate. We've got to use restorative justice. We've got to look past childish behavior and not try them as adults so that they can make it in this world. They can grow up and be positive and have a positive outlook. Thanks for my time.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Next, we'll have Mr. Thrower.
Okay. Thank you, Bianca, for hosting this forum, and Kimberlin for being the moderator. I also want to thank the other candidates for participating tonight. As you can see, I'm excited to be running for the school board. I'm passionate about education and its future, as demonstrated by my years of volunteering and community service. I promise that if elected to the school board, I will work hard to ensure that our students and teachers will have the best educational resources and support. My campaign motto is better schools for a brighter future, and I believe that together we can make this happen. Please vote Mitch Thrower on August 18th, and thank you for your support. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. And next we'll go to Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to connect with voters. As you can see, I'm extremely passionate. I'm also the candidate up here who has the knowledge and the experience to be on this board. I've been involved with my community for a long time, and not just now. I also am not afraid to fight for what's right, but that doesn't stop me from building the relationships that I need to build to make sure that we're supporting our students. I'm not afraid to ask the tough questions, to be reflective, to be accessible, to be transparent in everything that I do. And really what drives me in this campaign is my community, making sure that I'm supporting students and teachers and education. I'm extremely passionate about it. It is our power. It's our pathway to the future. I plan to stay in schools and continue to sub when elected, because I don't want to disconnect from what I love, and I want to make sure I'm in the classrooms, I'm attentive to teachers' needs, I'm making sure that we're up to date on the most progressive policies as far as education is concerned, and that we're reaching our students. So I believe that I'm the right candidate for the job, and I'm asking for your vote on August 18th, 2020. You can also learn more by going to my website at www.jessicavaughn.us. And again, I just appreciate everyone who's taken their time to really engage in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. And lastly, we'll hear from Mr. Werner.
Thank you again, Ms. Jackson. Every candidate agrees that we need more funding. All of our good ideas are doomed to limited success without it. Again, $6 billion is needed to reach the median among the states in our investment in education in Florida. How many of our audience members have heard that number before? Can we have a show of hands? Aha, I thought so. Nobody. We must speak out and educate the parents and grandparents of our students, which is an awful lot of voters. In my website, kidsfirstflorida.com, there's a challenge to legislators to produce a minimum of a double-digit increase in funding. I'm going to see if I can get any of those candidates to accept what some would consider political suicide and sign that pledge. Again, fellow candidates, feel free to use any of the facts on my website in your own campaigns. Thank you. Rick Warner, District 3.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Well, everyone, that's a wrap. Thank you again to Teaching for the Culture for hosting this forum, and to all of you for watching. This was an amazing experience. Please be sure to take part in the poll to cast your vote. The link is pinned in the comments section. We will see you at next week's forum for the District 7 countywide seat. Again, my name is Kimberlin Jackson. Have a wonderful night.